Entrevisté a Will Arnett, es decir, la voz de BoJack Horseman, por una película en la que hace de un estandopero en el Comedy Cellar de Nueva York. Alrededor de esta entrevista hay un chingo de cosas, quiero dar contexto. Ya salió en Estados Unidos, pero ahora estrena en México, Is This Thing On. La tradujeron en español como ¿está funcionando esto? Creo que no había forma fácil de traducir este título sin dar un poquito de cringe, pero es este mal chiste que hace un comediante cuando el público no se está riendo de sus chistes y sugiere que el micrófono quizá está descompuesto. ¿Is This Thing On? Pero el caso es que la película tiene una premisa muy chingona y está inspirada en el caso real de John Bishop, un comediante británico hoy muy exitoso que quizá hayan visto en algún clip de algo en redes y que se volvió comediante de una forma muy particular. Era el año 2000, John tenía como 34 años y se estaba divorciando de su esposa Melanie. Ninguno de los dos se había hecho nada malo, no es como que se hubieran puesto el cuerno o algo por el estilo, simplemente había crecido un abismo entre los dos, quizá como consecuencia de que tuvieron 3 hijos muy rápido. El matrimonio se había descompuesto, el divorcio parecía ser la respuesta. John le estaba pasando muy mal y para levantarse el ánimo un día fue a un club de comedia. Cabe mencionar acá que John en ese momento no era comediante ni tenía ninguna intención de serlo, no era tampoco actor, no se dedicaba a nada del entretenimiento, era simplemente un tipo normal que en ese momento se estaba divorciando. Y para ponerse un poquito de buenas fue este club de comedia en el que resulta esa noche había open mic, es decir, la noche que los comediantes prueban sus chistes para después poco a poco irlos puliendo. Le cobraban 4 libras de cover para poder entrar al club de comedia, pero los comediantes que se subían a probar chistes no tenían que pagar cover. Para ahorrarse las 4 libras, John se anotó en la lista de comediantes pensando igual y ni me llaman, pero había poca gente esa noche, lo llamaron, se subió al escenario y frente a 7 desconocidos que había esa noche, John se empezó a desahogar sobre su divorcio. Ese fue el primer espacio en que se permitió hablar sobre lo que sentía, y resulta que al hacerlo, era chistoso. Algo de risa le sacó a esos extraños esa noche contando su vida. Le dieron ganas de volver y entonces empezó a frecuentar open mics casi como una forma de terapia. Hasta que una noche su esposa fue a un show de comedia en el que John se presentaba. Ella no lo sabía. John no le había dicho a nadie que estaba haciendo comedia. Y en su rutina, él tenía un chiste sobre su esposa donde decía que le extrañaba tanto que guardaba su cabeza en el refrigerador. Era un chiste muy oscuro. Pero el caso es que él no sabía que su esposa estaba en el público. Contó el chiste, ella lo escuchó y terminando el show se pusieron a platicar. Y resulta que ver a John en el escenario le recordó a Melanie el tipo abierto y divertido con el que ella se había casado tantos años atrás. Se reconciliaron y a la fecha John dice que fue gracias a la comedia que se salvó su matrimonio. Y encima se volvió un exitoso comediante y cambió de carrera. Las mejores 4 libras que nunca gastó. Y el caso es que un día John Bishop se topa con Will Arnett en una lancha en Ámsterdam. No estoy inventando nada de esto. Le contó su historia, la historia conmovió muchísimo a Will y par de años después se estrena Is This Thing On, donde Will interpreta a Alex Novak, un personaje inspirado en John Bishop. En la película cambian cosas de la forma en que Alex se topa con la escena de la comedia con respecto a cómo John se topó con la escena de la comedia en la vida real. Empezando con que esta historia ocurre en Nueva York, ya solito la escena del stand-up es completamente diferente que lo que es en Manchester. Pero la película es, al final del día, y aunque peque de cursi, una carta de amor al stand-up. La película la dirige Bradley Cooper, que sé que es muy fan del stand-up como medio de expresión. Se sabe que Bradley Cooper es muy amigo de Dave Chappelle. Esta historia tiene todo que ver con comedia, particularmente con el stand-up como forma de arte y como herramienta terapéutica. Y es por eso que esta entrevista con Will Arnett sucedió en el Comedy Cellar, el club de comedia más emblemático de Nueva York, la ciudad que es considerada la meca del stand-up. Como comediante, esta historia y este espacio resuenan un chingo conmigo. Como fan de BoJack Horseman, casi me desmayo nomás de conocer a este señor. Y si quieren, cierren los ojos para imaginar que quien estoy entrevistando es un caballo. Ahora sí los dejo con Will Arnett. Hi, I'm Javier Ibarreche from Mexico, and I'm here with Will Arnett to talk about Is This Thing On. Will, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Really good. It's really an honor to meet you. I'm a big fan of your work. BoJack Horseman is really important to me, but more importantly, to this day, my sister still calls me hermano.
Yes.
She kept using this guy's name, like, hermano.
Let me tell you something, Joe. We're going to track this Hermano down, okay? And we're going to nail him.
So, just very quickly as context, besides doing this, I'm also an actor. I studied theater at university, and a few years after that, I became a stand-up comedian. And one of the first things that I learned when I started doing comedy was that I should drop the actor. My teacher told me that when I went up on stage to tell jokes, it's not that I'm performing a character, more of a stage persona, he called it. Like a more potent version of yourself, which is different from playing a character.
Sure.
I share this with you because I'm really fascinated with your character in the movie because you play this guy who discovers stand-up comedy and you play him performing.
Yes.
So I was wondering, what's it like to play a character who is developing a stage persona? Or what can you tell me about those scenes where you were performing comedy?
Well, I had to, it's a great question. I had to try to understand what it was like. I'm not a stand-up, but I am a performer. so I had to kind of resist my urges as a performer when I was doing stand-up to try to go and understand what it was like to be a guy who's never had any experience doing stand-up or performing at all.
Right.
And to kind of look at it through that lens. And so I started doing stand-up leading up to filming the movie.
Really?
Yeah, and on this stage. I mean, I stood right here on this very stage where we are in this club and came down here and got introduced as Alex Novak. This was, I think, the second time I went up, I came up on this stage here.
Wow.
Yeah, and then around the corner also. And, you know, they would introduce me and I'd walk all the way around. They'd say, please welcome his first time ever, Alex Novak. And I would get up here and try to experience what that was like to be a guy who's never performed at all, whose name gets called up by mistake. And it allowed me to kind of rehearse that actually when we were doing all the stand-up, and it was great. And right before the first time I did it around the corner, they called my name. They said, Alex Novak. And Bradley Cooper, who directed the film, stopped me and he said, we're doing something different. Meaning, don't go up there and try to rely on your instincts as a performer. You're going up there as Alex Novak. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so that's what I had to try to do. That was the exercise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've experienced it obviously here, but facing an audience can be terrifying.
Yeah.
And I think in that sense, the camera might be like the ultimate spectator, because especially in those scenes, you had it like right here in your face.
Yeah.
It doesn't react. And I noticed something that Alex, as long as he was like, when he was gaining confidence on stage, the camera pulled further away from him. And then when he lost that confidence, the camera was like right back in his face. I was wondering, how did you engage with the camera, or what was your relationship to it in those scenes where you were performing?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're right. The camera was very close to me when we were shooting. And, you know, Bradley had such a great understanding. He has such a deep understanding of cinema and a great, a point of view, and really knew exactly how he wanted it to be and to look and to stage all of it. And so for me, it was much more about just letting that go, that relationship between the camera and me, and just, you know, trying as much as I could. And also because he and I are so close as friends that there wasn't any discomfort in that. You know, I trusted him implicitly. So if he walked and he was closer to me, I wasn't thinking about the camera. I was just able to be in that moment. That was, and let him kind of figure that out.
Trusting the process and trusting
100%,
what he was doing.
100%. And kind of getting out of that results, which I think was new for me. I used to always be very aware of what I do, and should I look at this camera? Should I take a moment? Am I close enough? Do you want my shoulder? All that stuff. I just let it go. Right. This was the first time ever that I just kind of didn't think about any of it. And
like, I think you can tell in those moments that like Alex is really present when he's performing. It's interesting because he discovers stand-up and he uses it almost as a form of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that he shows genuine compassion for himself and for his marriage, and that's what makes him funny the first times that he goes up. But as his personal life evolves, what he shares on stage does as well.
Yeah.
Almost as if the previous joke can't work anymore because that doesn't hurt anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the one time that he goes up on stage without compassion and more like with hatred, he isn't funny.
Yeah.
So this might be a bit of a broad question, but is it possible to be funny without pain? Or in a broader sense, where do you think funny comes from?
Boy, I don't know.
I know it's a
well, that's a really big question. I don't know. And of course, comedy does not need to come from a place of pain. Some does, and because I think that what can happen is a comic can share something that's really personal or a sort of a truth that a lot of people can identify with and relate to. And comedy is a great way to discuss difficult subjects. And if you can find a way to kind of get to the root of that and talk about that stuff, everybody else can kind of laugh, sometimes nervously, but it kind of lets the air out of it.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that are painful that are funny to talk about because they feel dangerous, and sometimes things are taboo, and that's also dangerous. But also sometimes they're not. And so I think there used to be that notion that all stand-ups are troubled people,
yeah,
you know, or dark or whatever. And I don't think that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I know that I know that this story is inspired by John Bishop's true story.
Yeah.
Of how he became a comedian and how comedy basically gave him a new life or a way to live it better.
Mm-hmm.
I think in that sense, we can all relate to this search for reinventing or rediscovering ourselves, whether through comedy or through something else. But for you personally, what was it about John's story that moved you and made you want or even need to make this movie?
I think, of course, it's very compelling when John tells a story of a guy who has no relationship to stand-up comedy and all of a sudden becomes a big stand-up.
Yeah.
Like that's interesting in and of itself. But ultimately, that wasn't the story that we wanted to tell. I think that what really got me was when he talked about he felt stuck in his life. And he didn't know why. And I think that his wife did too, Mel. And so when he told the story of getting called on stage, going up that first time, and feeling this sense of relief, and then going back again and getting more relief and starting to feel, in himself a little bit. And then it was, a long time later that his wife, who he was in the process of divorcing, came in and saw him. That all really happened. And she saw him on stage and didn't know he was doing stand-up because he hadn't told anybody. And afterwards, she said to him, "That guy on stage, that was the guy I married."
Wow.
And that idea, that is what really got me, that like doing stand-up helped him. He had no designs to be a stand-up comedian, but what it did do was it connected him in a way brought him back to who he really was. And he was able to have joy and be honest and be open and all those things. And that got me.
Wow. And very quickly before wrapping up, there's a really nice moment in the movie. I think it's the second time that Alex goes on stage, where he's talking with a few comedians afterwards, and they share what was the moment that inspired them to become comedians. The first time they watched the Comedy Jam, or like the first thing they saw on TV that moved them, and they were like, "I want to be that." And I was wondering, is there a moment in a movie or a TV show or a play or anything that gave you the "I want to be an actor" feeling?
I don't know if there was one moment for me if I'm being honest. I wish I had like a perfect answer for that. But there have been moments. There have been moments in films that I've seen and things that I did when I was younger that I thought like, oh, I'd like to do that. I remember as a teenager, and I'm a broken record about this, but there's my favorite film of all time is this film Withnail and I, and actually just happened to do a screening in the UK with Richard E. Grant, who's the star of it, which was such a thrill after all these years, almost 40 years later.
Wow.
And seeing that film really inspired me, and it always has. There was something about it that really inspired me. So it's just kind of little moments like that. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Well, Will, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the movie. And again, it's an honor to meet you. I just wanted to show you really quickly.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
You're a real fan. I mean, that's forever.
And also of The Sopranos, which I know you're also in.
Yes.
So it's like all over the place. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.